Operation Fast and Furious. The government's attempting to track illegal weapons sales along our southern border may have cost border agent Brian Terry his life. And now it may cost the head of the ATF, Ken Melson, his job. He's expected to resign today. Congressman Darrell Issa is the chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. He released documents showing Melson's involvement in the troubled operation. Big hearings last week. Welcome, Chairman. First off, should Melson lose his job?
He should. He was part of the bad judgment. And when I say bad judgment, it wasn't just him. They had to go to justice to get money, to get FBI agents, all the other people that helped coordinate this, and to get the wiretaps they used. This was a program so stupid from the start. Like everyone, you said, track. What they did was not track. They videotaped when the purchase was made. They tracked for an hour or two, and then they were ordered to break away, and they didn't see the guns again until they arrived at a crime scene, usually in Mexico. In the case of Brian Terry, at a crime scene well into Arizona in the U.S. These guns did not necessarily go to Mexico.
So guns were sold in the U.S. We wanted to track them into Mexico to have an idea of where they go and who is buying them. That was the intent of the project. Who is the person who came up with this plan?
Well, from what we can tell, it did sort of develop at ATF. But as they got approval, buy-in, many of the ATF agents said, no, this is stupid. We don't let guns walk. They were punished for it. There were reprisals. Our whistleblowers, in many cases, are longstanding ATF agents who said this is wrong and were punished for doing it. So, in your mind, can an ATF, the head of the ATF in an acting position, could he do that on his own? Or in your mind, in all your years of government and in business management, don't you think that someone higher up had to know about this, green light this? More than just higher up. U.S. attorneys, justice itself, all the way up to Lanny Brewer at least, and most importantly, even a federal judge who had to sign off on these wiretaps. The difference is you can tell a federal judge you're wiretapping. You don't have to tell them that you're watching the guns walk and not doing anything about it. But clearly at justice, at high levels, they knew the details because they were funding and coordinating who was on this program. From your best estimate, from your hearings and your research and your context, do you believe the Attorney General, Eric Holder, knew? I believe he should have known. I believe it was his obligation to know. The fact that there was a don't ask, don't tell policy at Eric Holder's office is to say, really, he wasn't doing his job if he didn't know. So do you think, will you pursue that to find out what he knew? Because you think as a management, with all your experience, he should have known. Will you pursue to find out who knew and how far this went up the chain? We have to get up the alternate chain. With Melson leaving the top of the ATF, he's being held accountable. But nobody's being held accountable. The U.S. Attorney's Office or at Justice. That has to change. All right. There's something else which is really affecting American business. In this time when the economy's bad and jobs are scarce, Boeing decided to put a plant into South Carolina and start building. What happened? This is the strangest distortion of U.S. law. Under a 1935 Act, you have the ability to stop a company from retribution, from reprisals for a strike or some other union activity. In this case, Boeing is expanding. They've added 3,000 jobs in Everett, Washington. This is the Seattle area plant. Union jobs. They're adding 1,000 jobs in South Carolina, in Charleston. That happens to be a plant that voted out the union. It's a right-to-work state, and they voted out the union. What's happening is NLRB has come in and said, no, you can't add that 1,000 jobs. You have to add all 4,000 jobs in Seattle. Otherwise, it's a reprisal. If we set a standard that if you don't continually expand on your union base, if you ever try to expand outside of your union base, it's a reprisal. It is literally the forced unionization of America. I want you to hear what Karen Maloney said at your hearing on Friday. She's a Democrat. Let's listen.
I support creating great jobs and reducing unemployment across the United States. But I also believe that Boeing is not above the law. And as members of Congress, we should not set aside the law to give preferred treatment to any one company. Above the law. If Boeing wants to expand and go to South Carolina for whatever reason, it seems anti-American to think they can't. Well, she was doing the bidding of the ranking member. Clearly, you could see she was reading a statement that came right out of the administration. That may be their line, but that's not what the law is. It's not what
50, 60, 70 years of practice has been, if companies cannot be mixed union, non-union, and expand in the place of their choice, which happens to be the low-cost, high-production area where people want these jobs, then America will ultimately end up exporting even more jobs. The Seattle Times actually came out against this indictment, because very clearly Washington's looking and saying, if we do this, people won't locate here to begin with because they'll be afraid they can't leave.
So you're exposing this. You're absolutely, Chairman, you're upset by this. So you're examining this. And where do we stand right now? Are people in South Carolina allowed to be hired by Boeing? Are they working today?
Administrative law judge has not stopped them. So Boeing is going ahead. They've got $1 billion investment there. They have people trained. What we're trying to do as oversight and reform is first expose this overstep by a so-called independent agency, all Obama appointees, and then go to the next part, which is offer legislation to reform this misinterpretation of the act.
We will track your investigation. Thank you very much. Always great to see you from the West Coast to Washington to New York. Thanks so much. Meanwhile,